London, 1862. The grandfather clock in the hallway tolled 5 times, reminding Helena Carmichael that her time was running out. She stared at her reflection in the small, cracked mirror that hung in her modest bedroom. The dark circles under her eyes betrayed the sleepless night spent listening to her father's drunken rambling and calculating the family's mounting debts. "Helena! Come down this instant!" Her father's voice thundered through the once grand townhouse. She smoothed down the front of her faded blue dress, once her mother's, now altered and re-altered until the seams could bear no more adjustments, and hurried down the creaking staircase. The remnants of their former wealth were scattered throughout the house, a tarnished silver candlestick here, a worn Persian rug there, ghosts of a prosperity that had vanished with her mother's death 5 years prior. Lord George Carmichael, once respected among London's elite, now a gambling-addicted widower with bloodshot eyes, waited impatiently in the drawing-room. His fingers drummed against the desk where unpaid bills were stacked like tombstones. "You summoned me, Father." Helena kept her voice steady, though her heart raced. She had long since learned that showing fear only provoked his temper. "Sit down, girl." At 22, Helena was hardly a girl anymore, but she had resigned herself to her father's dismissive tone years ago. A woman's worth in their world was measured by her dowry and connections, both of which she lacked entirely. "We are ruined," he announced without preamble. "Completely and utterly ruined. Beresford has called in his loans." Helena's stomach dropped. Lord Beresford was known for his mercilessness toward debtors. "What shall we do?" Her father's laugh held no humor. "What shall we do? What have you done, you mean?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing to secure a decent match all these years. Your mother would be ashamed." The word stung, but Helena kept her expression neutral. She believed, deep in her heart, that love was a luxury reserved for those with fortune and status. For women like her, fallen from grace, penniless, with a ruined family name, love was an impossibility. "I have secured you a husband," Lord Carmichael continued, pouring himself another glass of brandy. "A wounded veteran from the Crimean War. He's in need of a nurse more than a wife, but he's offered to clear my debts in exchange for your hand. You've sold me." The words felt foreign on her tongue. "Don't be dramatic, Helena. I've secured your future. The man needs care, and you need a roof over your head. He'll be here tomorrow. Major Barrett Fairchild. Apparently, he has a small estate in Yorkshire." He waved his hand dismissively. "You'll be married by special license before the week is out." Helena felt the walls of the drawing-room closing in. "And if I refuse?" Her father's eyes narrowed. "Then we both end up in debtor's prison by month's end. Is that what you prefer? The streets, perhaps? Or would you rather join your cousin in the workhouse?" She thought of her cousin Emma, once vibrant and beautiful, now withered from labor and starvation. No, that would not be her fate. "I'll do as you wish," she said softly, the words tasting like surrender. "Good girl." He refilled his glass. "Pack your things. Your fiancé arrives tomorrow afternoon." That night, Helena wept silently into her pillow. Not for the loss of a romantic dream, she had abandoned those long ago, but for the final theft of her autonomy. Tomorrow she would become the property of a stranger, a broken soldier who had purchased a nurse wife. Morning came too quickly, grey light filtering through the threadbare curtains. Helena dressed with care in her best gown, a modest lavender creation that had been recut from one of her mother's evening dresses. She twisted her chestnut hair into a simple chignon and pinched her pale cheeks for color. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Helena stood in the drawing-room beside her father, hands clasped tightly before her to hide their trembling. The butler, the last servant they could afford to keep, announced, Major Barrett Fairchild. Helena braced herself to face a decrepit invalid. Instead, the man who entered moved with a slight limp but otherwise carried himself with military precision. Tall and broad-shouldered, the Major had a face that might have been handsome before war had carved its history into it. A jagged scar ran from his right temple to his jaw, and his left hand was partially gloved, concealing what Helena assumed was terrible damage. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, grey as a winter sea and just as cold. "Lord Carmichael." His voice was deep and measured. "And this must be Miss Carmichael." Helena curtsied, her gaze lowered. "Major Fairchild." "My daughter is eager to make your acquaintance," her father said with false joviality. "Perhaps you would like to discuss the arrangements over tea." "I prefer directness, sir." Major Fairchild's gaze never left Helena. "Miss Carmichael, are you aware of the nature of our arrangement? I am to be your wife and nurse, in exchange for settling my father's debts," she answered quietly. Something flickered in the Major's expression. "And you agree to this arrangement?" Helena felt her father's warning glance. "I do." "Very well." The Major reached inside his coat and produced a document. "The marriage settlement, Lord Carmichael. My solicitor has drawn up the papers. Your debts will be settled upon our marriage, which I have arranged for Thursday at St. George's. I trust that is satisfactory." Lord Carmichael scanned the document, his eyes widening. "This is most generous, Major. I'm not interested in your approval of the terms, only your daughter's comfort." He turned to Helena. "Would you walk with me in the garden, Miss Carmichael? I believe we should become acquainted before Thursday." Her father could hardly object. Helena led the Major to their small, neglected garden, where spring had begun to coax reluctant blooms from the untended soil. "You don't want this marriage," Major Fairchild stated once they were alone. Helena's head snapped up. "I beg your pardon. Don't insult my intelligence, Miss Carmichael. You're being sold to pay gambling debts. A woman of your beauty and youth would hardly choose a scarred veteran voluntarily." Her cheeks colored at his bluntness. "You speak very frankly, sir. War leaves little patience for social niceties." He gestured to a stone bench. "Please, sit. I want to explain what you're agreeing to." She sat, keeping a proper distance between them. "My injuries are considerable, though less debilitating than many believe," he said. "I can walk, though prolonged standing causes pain. My left hand has limited function. There are other scars you cannot see." Helena swallowed. "I understand, sir." "No, you don't." His voice softened unexpectedly. "I'm not looking for a nurse, Miss Carmichael. I have staff for that. I need a wife who can manage a household and provide companionship. Someone who can stand beside me in society without flinching at the whispers and stares." "Society?" She couldn't help but ask. "I was given to understand you lived quietly in Yorkshire." A strange smile crossed his face. "Among other places. My circumstances are complex." They spoke for nearly an hour. The Major asked about her education, her interests, her experience managing a household. He revealed little about himself beyond his military service and a brief mention of an estate called Thornfield Hall. When he departed, he left Helena with more questions than answers. "Well," her father demanded when she returned inside. "We are to be married on Thursday," she replied simply. "Good. Good." He seemed distracted. "He's wealthier than I realized. The settlement is substantial." "How fortunate for you," Helena said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. The wedding was a quiet affair. Helena wore her mother's refurbished wedding gown, and the Major appeared in formal attire that did nothing to diminish his imposing presence. There were no guests beyond the required witnesses. When the clergyman pronounced them man and wife, the Major placed a brief, formal kiss on her lips, her first kiss, from a stranger who now owned her. A fine carriage awaited them outside the church. As they departed London, Helena watched her old life disappear through the window. "Are we going directly to Yorkshire?" she asked, breaking the silence. "No." Her husband, how strange to think of him as such, adjusted his gloved hand. "We'll stay in my London residence tonight. There are matters I must attend to before we travel north." Helena's surprise must have shown on her face. "You were told I had a small estate in Yorkshire," he said with that same strange smile. "Your father made certain assumptions about my circumstances that I did not correct. I don't understand." The carriage turned into an elegant street in Mayfair that Helena recognized as one of the most exclusive addresses in London. It stopped before a magnificent townhouse with liveried footmen waiting at the entrance. "Welcome to Fairchild House, Lady Fairchild," the Major said, watching her reaction carefully. "Lady Fairchild," she echoed, confused. "I am the Earl of Westmoreland," he said simply. "A title I inherited 2 years ago, while still recovering from my injuries at the military hospital." Helena stared at him in shock. The Earl of Westmoreland was one of the wealthiest peers in England, owner of vast estates and rumoured to have made a fortune in shipping and railways. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "Would it have changed your decision?" His expression was unreadable. I don't know." "Precisely." He exited the carriage and offered her his hand. "Your father sold you to a wounded veteran, not knowing he was the wealthiest earl in the country. And now I find myself curious, what kind of countess will you become, Helena?" The next weeks passed in a blur of revelations. Fairchild House was merely one of Barrett's residencies. He owned 3 country estates, including Thornfield Hall in Yorkshire, a castle in Scotland, and properties in Bath and Brighton. His business interests spanned continents. Helena was suddenly thrust into a world of luxury she had only glimpsed from afar. Seamstresses arrived to fit her for an extensive wardrobe. Servants addressed her as "my lady" with deference. A lady's maid was assigned to attend to her every need. And yet, her marriage remained unconsummated. Barrett had provided her with a luxurious suite of rooms adjoining his own but made no attempt to visit her bed. Their interactions were unfailingly polite but formal, as though they were still strangers, which, Helena supposed, they were. 1 month after their wedding, the first invitation arrived. "The Duchess of Richmond's ball," Barrett said, passing her the gilt-edged card over breakfast. "Your debut in society as Countess of Westmoreland." Helena nearly choked on her tea. "Surely you jest." "I'm hardly prepared for such an event." "You're my wife. Your place is at my side." His tone brooked no argument. "Mrs. Winters has engaged a dancing master to refresh your skills, and your new gowns should be sufficient." "It isn't the gowns I'm concerned about," she admitted. The daughter of a disgraced gambler, suddenly appearing as a countess? The gossip will be merciless. Barrett set down his coffee cup. "Do you know why I chose you, Helena?" The question caught her off guard. "Because my father owed you money." "Your father owed money to Lord Beresford, not to me. I purchased his debt specifically to offer for you." "But why?" "I saw you once, at the British Museum. You were sketching a Greek statue with such concentration that you didn't notice the rain beginning outside. A young man offered you his umbrella, but you declined, saying you preferred to feel the weather change. A smile softened his scarred face. I found myself intrigued by a woman who would risk ruining her bonnet for art and sensation. Helena remembered that day. She had been waiting for her father, stealing a few moments of peace in the museum galleries. You've been observing me since then. Making inquiries, he corrected. I learned of your circumstances and found myself concerned. So you married me out of pity. The thought stung worse than she expected. I married you because I wanted a wife who sees beauty in unexpected places. Barrett rose from the table. The ball is in 2 weeks. We'll face society together. The Duchess of Richmond's ball was the most intimidating event Helena had ever attended. Her gown, a creation of emerald silk and delicate lace, was the finest she had ever worn, but it did little to calm her nerves as their carriage approached the brilliantly lit mansion. Remember, Barrett said softly, you are the Countess of Westmoreland. Hold your head high. The ballroom fell into a hush as they were announced. Helena felt the weight of hundreds of curious eyes upon her. She heard the whispers, Carmichael's daughter, bought and paid for, scarred war hero, but kept her gaze steady, her hand resting lightly on Barrett's arm. The Duchess approached, her assessment critical but not unkind. So, you've finally taken a wife, Westmoreland. And quite a lovely one. Indeed, Your Grace. May I present my Countess, Helena? The evening proceeded like a carefully choreographed dance. Some members of society embraced her with genuine warmth, others with calculated civility, and a few with undisguised disdain. Through it all, Barrett remained at her side, his presence both protective and possessive. During a moment of respite, while Barrett spoke with a government minister, Lady Pevensey, a notorious gossip, cornered Helena by the refreshment table. Such a romantic tale, the older woman said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The impoverished beauty and the wealthy earl. One wonders what charms you possess to have captured such a prize. The same charms that allow me to recognize insincerity when I hear it, Lady Pevensey, Helena replied sweetly. The woman's smile faltered. Well, I see you have a sharp tongue. Only when necessary. Helena inclined her head. If you'll excuse me, I believe my husband is looking for me. As she turned to leave, she heard Lady Pevensey mutter to her companion, no breeding at all. Helena felt her resolve weaken. Perhaps this had been a mistake. She could never belong in this world of wealth and privilege. She had been a fool to think, you handled that remarkably well. Barrett's voice came from beside her, startling her from her thoughts. You heard? I did. His eyes held unexpected warmth. Lady Pevensey has been terrorizing newcomers to society for 30 years. You're the first to leave her speechless in quite some time. Despite herself, Helena smiled. I doubt I've made a friend. Better to make the right enemies than the wrong friends. He offered his arm. Would you honor me with a dance, my lady? As Barrett led her onto the dance floor, Helena became acutely aware of his physical presence. The hand that held hers was strong, his injured left hand resting lightly at her waist. Despite his limp, he moved with surprising grace, guiding her through the waltz with confident steps. You dance very well for a man who claimed to be severely injured, she observed. I said my injuries were considerable, not that they prevented me from dancing with my wife. His expression turned serious. Helena, there's something we must discuss when we return home tonight. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and stilted conversations. By the time they departed, Helena's cheeks ached from maintaining her social smile, and her mind raced with anxiety over whatever Barrett wished to discuss. In the privacy of their carriage, he spoke first. You were magnificent tonight. You sound surprised. Not surprised. Impressed. He studied her face in the passing lamplight. Many would have crumbled under such scrutiny. What did you wish to discuss? Helena asked, unable to bear the suspense any longer. Barrett hesitated, something she had never seen him do before. I have been unfair to you. Unfair? You've given me everything, except honesty. He removed the glove from his left hand, revealing a web of burned scars and 2 missing fingers. My injuries are more extensive than you've seen. There are burns across much of my body from an explosion in Sevastopol. I understand if you find them repulsive. Helena felt a surge of compassion. Is that why you've kept your distance? Partly. His gaze met hers. I wanted to give you time to adjust to your new circumstances before adding the duties of a wife to your burdens. They wouldn't be burdens, she said softly, surprising herself with her sincerity. Something changed in his expression, hope, perhaps. Helena, I want you to know that while our marriage began as a transaction, I hope it might become something more. For the first time since their wedding, Barrett kissed her, not the formal peck of their ceremony, but a real kiss, tender and questioning. When they arrived home, he escorted her not to her separate chambers but to his own. That night, Helena discovered that beneath his scars was a man capable of great gentleness. Barrett's damaged body told the story of his courage, and in the intimacy of their marital bed, she found herself strangely proud to be his wife. As spring turned to summer, Helena slowly adapted to her new life. She took an interest in the management of their households, consulted with the estate stewards, and began to make subtle improvements to Thornfield Hall when they relocated there in July. Barrett encouraged her artistic pursuits, converting a sunny room into a studio where she could paint and sketch undisturbed. Yet for all the outward signs of harmony, Helena kept part of herself guarded. She performed her duties as Countess admirably but maintained an emotional distance that Barrett seemed to respect. Their physical relationship had blossomed, but Helena still believed that true love was beyond her reach, that Barrett had married her out of convenience and perhaps compassion, but never love. This belief was challenged one rainy afternoon when a visitor arrived at Thornfield Hall. Lady Harriet Foster requests an audience with the Earl, the butler announced as Helena and Barrett sat reading in the library. Barrett's expression darkened. Show her to the blue drawing room. I'll see her shortly. When the butler departed, Helena raised an eyebrow. An old acquaintance. We were briefly engaged before the war. Barrett's voice was strained. The engagement was broken when I returned, like this. He gestured to his scarred face. I see. Helena felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Shall I accompany you? That won't be necessary. He rose and left the library without another word. Helena tried to return to her book but found her attention wandering. Lady Harriet Foster, the name was familiar from society gossip. Beautiful, accomplished, and from one of England's oldest families. The kind of woman who should have been Barrett's countess. Unable to contain her curiosity, Helena slipped from the library and made her way to the blue drawing room. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear voices from within. You look well, Barrett. A woman's melodic voice. Better than when I last saw you. War changes a man, Harriet. As does rejection. You know why I couldn't bear to look at me. Yes, you made that abundantly clear. A pause. I've come to make amends. My circumstances have changed. My husband died last year, and I find myself reconsidering my choices. Helena felt her heart constrict. You're too late, Barrett said, his voice cold. I'm married. To a penniless nobody. Lady Harriet's tone turned dismissive. A marriage that could be easily set aside. I have connections in Rome who could arrange an annulment. You misunderstand me, Harriet. I'm not merely married, I'm in love with my wife. Helena's breath caught. In love? Lady Harriet laughed incredulously. With George Carmichael's daughter? The girl you purchased like a broodmare. Take care how you speak of my countess. Barrett's voice had dropped to a dangerous register. Helena has shown more courage, grace, and character in our few months of marriage than you demonstrated in our entire acquaintance. You've changed, Barrett. Yes. And I have my wife to thank for much of that change. His tone softened. I wish you well, Harriet, but I must ask you to leave my home now. Helena quickly retreated, her mind whirling. Barrett had claimed to love her, but to a woman he wished to dismiss, not to Helena herself. Could it be true? Or merely a convenient excuse to rid himself of an unwanted visitor? That evening at dinner, Barrett seemed preoccupied. I apologize for our unexpected guest today. No apology necessary. Helena kept her voice neutral. Old acquaintances often reappear at inconvenient times. Barrett set down his fork. What did you hear? Helena froze. I don't know what you mean. Helena. His gaze was unwavering. You're many things, but a convincing liar is not one of them. She felt her cheeks warm. I may have overheard part of your conversation. How much? Enough. She met his eyes. Did you mean what you said to her? About loving me? The silence that followed seemed endless. Yes. Barrett's voice was barely audible. I've loved you since I saw you lost in contemplation at the museum. I loved you when you agreed to marry me to save your father. I loved you when you faced society with your head high. And I love you now, though I've given you little reason to return the sentiment. Helena felt tears gather in her eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Because our marriage began as a transaction. I didn't want you to feel obligated to reciprocate feelings you didn't share. He reached across the table, offering his scarred hand. I was content to love you silently and give you the freedom to find your own happiness. Helena placed her hand in his. I thought I was merely a duty to you. A convenient solution to your need for a countess. Never. His fingers tightened around hers. You are the heart of everything I do, Helena. That night, Barrett showed Helena the depth of his feelings in ways words could never express. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the darkness, she finally spoke the truth she had been afraid to acknowledge. I love you too, she whispered against his shoulder. I think I have since the ball, when you defended me against the whispers. My brave countess. He kissed her forehead. No longer afraid of love. Still terrified, she admitted. But willing to be brave. The transformation in their marriage was profound. Helena blossomed under Barrett's affection, no longer performing the role of countess but embodying it with genuine confidence. Barrett, in turn, became more open about his experiences in the war, allowing Helena to help heal the emotional scars that had lingered beneath the physical ones. 6 months after Lady Harriet's visit, Helena received a letter from her father requesting financial assistance. Barrett suggested they invite him to Thornfield for Christmas. Are you certain? Helena asked, remembering the man who had sold her without remorse. He gave me the greatest gift of my life, Barrett replied. However, unintentionally. Lord Carmichael arrived at Thornfield Hall a broken man, humbled by circumstance and chastened by his daughter's unexpected rise. When he saw Helena, resplendent in her fine gown with genuine happiness in her eyes, he scarcely recognized the solemn girl he had bargained away. You've done well for yourself, he said awkwardly when they were alone. No, father, Helena corrected gently. I've done well for myself. Barrett simply gave me the opportunity to discover my own worth. On Christmas Eve, as snow fell softly outside the great windows of Thornfield Hall, the Earl and Countess of Westmoreland hosted a small gathering of friends and family. The house was filled with music, laughter, and the scent of pine boughs and cinnamon. Helena, standing beside the Christmas tree with Barrett's arm around her waist, surveyed the scene with quiet joy. Her father, sober and subdued, engaged in conversation with Barrett's sister. Servants moved efficiently through the room, offering refreshments with genuine smiles. This was her home now, not because she had been sold into it, but because she had claimed it through love and determination. "Happy, my love," Barrett murmured against her ear. "Completely." She turned in his embrace, tracing the scar on his cheek with gentle fingers. Who would have thought that being sold to a wounded veteran would lead to this? "Not your father, certainly." Barrett laughed softly. "Though I suspect he's realized his mistake in undervaluing you." "We both made the same mistake," Helena said thoughtfully. "We believed love was a luxury reserved for the fortunate few. But love isn't about circumstance or status. It's about choosing to see the best in each other, even when the world sees only our flaws." Barrett kissed her hand, the gesture filled with reverence. "My wise countess. Always teaching me new truths." As the snow continued to fall and the clock chimed midnight, Helena knew with absolute certainty that she had found something far more valuable than wealth or title. In Barrett's love, she had discovered her own worth, a treasure no one could ever sell or buy, but only freely give and gratefully receive.